World War I, a conflict that reshaped the world and left an indelible mark on history. A new century dawned, but instead of progress, Europe plunged into darkness. The optimism of the early 1900s was shattered by the brutal reality of war. The trenches became the defining image of this new kind of war. Soldiers dug in, creating a labyrinth of defensive positions. Imagine a vast network of ditches stretching for miles. These trenches were not just simple holes in the ground. They were complex systems designed for both defense and survival. Mud everywhere, often knee-deep, sometimes swallowing men whole. The rain turned the ground into a quagmire, making movement difficult and dangerous. The trenches weren't just muddy, they were deadly. The constant threat of enemy fire, the ever-present danger of collapsing walls, and the risk of drowning in the mud made every day a fight for survival. Above, enemy snipers waited for any sign of movement. A single misstep, a moment of carelessness, and a soldier's life could be ended in an instant. Below, rats feasted on the remains of the dead. These vermin were more than just a nuisance. They were a constant reminder of the death and decay that surrounded the soldiers. Diseases spread like wildfire in the cramped, unsanitary conditions. Trenchfoot, dysentery and other illnesses claimed nearly as many lives as the enemy's bullets. Life in the trenches was a terrifying lottery. Each day brought new horrors, and survival was never guaranteed. One could be blown apart by artillery or picked off by a sniper while fetching water. The constant bombardment and the ever-present threat of death created an atmosphere of unrelenting tension. The constant fear, the lack of sleep, the unbearable conditions wore down even the toughest soldier. Exhaustion was a constant companion, and the mental toll of the war was as devastating as the physical injuries. Yet, amidst the horror, there were moments of humanity. Soldiers found solace in letters from home, shared stories, and forged bonds that would last a lifetime. They shared their meager rations, laughed at jokes, and found small joys in the bleakest of circumstances. These moments of camaraderie were a lifeline, a reminder of the world beyond the trenches. Despite the overwhelming odds, the soldiers remained determined. They fought not just for survival, but for each other, for their families, and for a future free from the horrors of war. The legacy of trench warfare is a somber one. The countless lives lost, the unimaginable suffering, and the enduring scars on those who survived serve as a stark reminder of the true cost of war. Today, the battlefields are quiet, the trenches overgrown, but the memory of those who fought and died remains, a testament to their courage and sacrifice. As we remember the reality of trench warfare, we honor the bravery of those who endured it and vow to never forget the lessons of the past. For years, the war on the Western Front ground to a halt. The landscape was scarred by endless trenches stretching as far as the eye could see, a testament to the brutal and unyielding nature of the conflict. Millions of men faced each other across a narrow no-man's land, trapped in a deadly stalemate. This narrow strip of land, often just a few hundred yards wide, became a symbol of the futility and horror of the war. It was a place where death was a constant companion and survival was a daily struggle. Attacks, when they came, were brutal and costly, often resulting in horrific casualties for minimal gains. Soldiers would charge into a hail of machine gun fire, only to be cut down in droves. The ground they fought so hard to capture was often lost within days, if not hours, leading to a sense of hopelessness and despair. The psychological toll of this stalemate was immense. Soldiers lived in a state of constant fear and anxiety, knowing that death could come at any moment. The endless waiting, the uncertainty, and the sheer monotony of trench life wore down even the strongest of men. Imagine living under constant threat of death, with no end in sight, the relentless shelling, the deafening explosions, and the ever-present danger of sniper fire created an environment of perpetual terror. Every day was a battle for survival, both physically and mentally. The endless shelling, the sight of friends blown apart, the knowledge that one might be next, it broke men's spirits. The battlefield was a gruesome tableau of death and destruction, with bodies lying unburied in no man's land, a grim reminder of the cost of war. Many soldiers suffered from shell shock, now known as PTSD. The constant stress and trauma took a heavy toll on their mental health, leaving them emotionally scarred and unable to function. They experienced symptoms such as tremors, nightmares, and severe anxiety, which often went untreated. They were haunted by nightmares, crippled by anxiety, unable to cope with the horrors they had witnessed. The psychological wounds of war were deep and long-lasting, affecting not only the soldiers but also their families and communities. The trenches were as much a psychological battleground as a physical one. The mental strain of living in such harsh conditions, combined with the constant threat of death, created a unique and devastating form of psychological warfare. The men who survived the trenches were forever changed, bearing the invisible scars of their experiences for the rest of their lives. As the stalemate dragged on, both sides desperately sought a solution, a way to break free from the trenches and achieve a decisive victory. New technologies like poison gas and the machine gun only increased the killing power without breaking the deadlock. Military minds searched for a solution, something that could cross the trenches, withstand machine gun fire, and clear a path for infantry. The answer, when it finally emerged, was as unexpected as it was revolutionary: the tank. The first tanks were far from the technological marvels we know today. Early prototypes were clunky and unreliable, prone to breakdowns. They were developed in secrecy, given misleading names like water tanks to confuse enemy spies. The British, facing the horrors of the trenches firsthand, pioneered tank development. Their goal: create a vehicle that could cross enemy trenches, crush barbed wire, and provide cover for advancing troops. This new weapon was seen as a potential war winner, a way to finally break the stalemate. Section 5. First shots, tanks, break the deadlock at the Somme. In September 1916, the tanks had their baptism by fire at the Battle of the Somme. This marked a pivotal moment in military history, as these mechanical beasts rolled onto the battlefield for the first time. The introduction of tanks was a desperate attempt to break the stalemate of trench warfare that had gripped the Western Front for years. Their debut was met with a mix of terror and amazement from both sides. Soldiers who had been accustomed to the static nature of trench warfare were suddenly faced with a new, mobile threat. The reactions ranged from sheer panic to awestruck fascination as these ironclad giants moved across the battlefield. The sight of these lumbering behemoths spitting fire and crushing obstacles was unlike anything seen before. They were slow and cumbersome, yet their presence was undeniably powerful. The tanks could traverse the treacherous no-man's land, crush barbed wire, and provide cover for advancing infantry. While their initial impact was limited by mechanical issues and poor coordination, the tanks at the Somme proved their potential. Many of the early models broke down or got stuck in the mud, and communication between tank crews and infantry was often problematic. However, the lessons learned from these early engagements were invaluable for future tank development. They could withstand machine gun fire, cross trenches, and demoralize the enemy. The psychological impact on the German soldiers was profound. Many had never seen such machines and were unprepared for their destructive capabilities. The tank's ability to cross trenches and navigate difficult terrain made them a formidable new weapon in the Allied arsenal. The tank had arrived, and warfare would never be the same. This innovation signaled the beginning of a new era in military strategy and technology. The lessons learned from the Battle of the Somme would pave the way for more advanced and reliable tanks in future conflicts. The tank's introduction was a game-changer, forever altering the landscape of warfare and setting the stage for modern armoured combat. Section 6. Teething troubles early tank warfare. Despite their promise, early tanks were far from perfect. They were slow, cumbersome, and mechanically unreliable. Crews faced immense challenges inside the cramped, noisy, and poorly ventilated tanks. Communication between tanks and infantry was also a major issue. Tank commanders, often isolated within their steel boxes, struggled to coordinate attacks with supporting troops. These early challenges highlighted the need for improved designs and tactics to fully utilize the tank's potential. Section 7. Adapting to the tank new strategies for a new battlefield. The tank's arrival forced a rapid evolution in military thinking. No longer could armies rely on static defences and massed infantry charges. New strategies were needed to counter the tank's mobility and firepower. The concept of combined arms warfare, where tanks, infantry and artillery worked in close coordination, began to emerge. Anti-tank weapons and tactics were developed to counter the tank threat. The tank, while revolutionary, did not make other arms obsolete. It forced them to adapt and evolve. Section 8, from trenches to blitzkrieg, the tank's evolving legacy. The tank's impact on warfare extended far beyond World War I. In the decades that followed, tank design and tactics continued to evolve, leading to the development of faster, more powerful and heavily armed tanks. The German blitzkrieg doctrine during World War II showcased the devastating potential of tanks used in fast-paced, mobile warfare. Tanks spearheaded breakthroughs, exploited enemy weaknesses, and paved the way for mechanized infantry and mobile artillery. Section 9. Modern warfare, forever changed by the tank. The tank remains a cornerstone of modern militaries worldwide. While its role and capabilities continue to evolve alongside other technologies, its importance on the battlefield is undeniable. The tank's legacy is forever intertwined with the horrors of trench warfare. It emerged as a symbol of hope, a weapon that could break the stalemate and end the carnage. The tank's story is a reminder of how innovation can reshape the face of war, for better or worse.